A millionaire CEO finds his secretary who entered the wrong bathroom and falls madly in love. Before we start the story, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Sarah Cole was having one of the worst mornings of her life. She rushed through the sleek hallways of Smith Enterprises, trying to find the meeting room where she was supposed to be in 5 minutes. It was her first day as an interpreter, and of course, she was already late. "Great, Sarah. You're going to get fired before even signing the contract. Congratulations on the record," she muttered to herself, clutching her bag and tablet tightly. But then, an even more urgent problem appeared. Her stomach twisted, a chill ran down her spine, and a terrifying thought hit her. "I need to go to the bathroom. Now." With frantic eyes, she spotted a sign with a little figure. Immediate relief. Without hesitation, she pushed the door open and went in. She rushed to the sink, washed her hands, and let out a sigh. That's when she started noticing something was off. Where were the makeup mirrors? The feminine hygiene bins? And then, she heard men's voices. "Man, that financial report was a mess. And the boss? Have you ever seen uncontrollable fury?" Sarah froze. "Wait, men's voices?" She blinked 3 times, looking around. "No, this can't be." Her heart stopped, her brain shut down. Her stomach tightened. She had entered the men's bathroom. In complete panic, she spun around and did what any sensible person would do in that situation. She stepped into the first stall and shut the door. Okay, Sarah. Don't panic. They'll leave, and you can slip out discreetly. No one will ever know." A perfect plan. Except for one small detail. She forgot to lock the door. And that's when fate decided to play the worst trick on her. The handle turned, the stall door swung open, and a tall, muscular man wearing only a towel appeared before her. Sarah's eyes met the stranger's. William Smith practically screamed, stepping back like he had just seen a ghost. "What is this?" Sarah, already frozen in place, screamed too. "Why are you screaming?" Sarah yelled, grabbing the closest toilet paper roll as an improvised weapon. "Why are you here?" William shot back, trying to figure out if this was some bizarre prank or a hallucination. Sarah could only think of 3 words: "I am dead." Her eyes automatically went to the CEO's defined abs, and when she realized she was staring, she looked away so fast she nearly twisted her neck. "I'm sorry. I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything," she shouted, covering her eyes. "Yes, you did." William snapped, clutching his towel like his dignity depended on it. Sarah, now in full-blown panic mode, tried to back away but slipped on the mat and landed flat on the floor of the stall. Ouch. William closed his eyes for a second, as if praying for patience. "Tell me this is a nightmare and I'm going to wake up any second now." Sarah, on the verge of a meltdown, tried to gather herself enough to explain. I was." She pointed at the toilet, desperately trying to come up with a plausible excuse. "In the men's bathroom?" William crossed his arms, frowning. Panic spread through Sarah like wildfire. I'm from the sanitary safety audit. Yes, that's it. I was checking if the company's restrooms meet international standards." William gave her a look that clearly said, "Do you really think I'm going to believe that? Sanitary safety? In the men's restroom? During work hours?" Yes. It's a new program. Innovative. First company to test it, and now I need to leave." Sarah tried to slip past him, but he blocked her way. He sighed, rubbing his temple like this was the most absurd thing he had ever dealt with. "Is this some kind of hidden camera prank?" He looked around, checking for any recording devices. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. "What? No, I just walked into the wrong place." William closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to hold on to the last bit of patience he had. "Great, now get out." Sarah tried to stand up quickly but smacked her head against the stall wall. "Ouch." William ran a hand down his face like he was about to have a nervous breakdown. "Are you trying to self-destruct in front of me?" "Not on purpose." "Then move before someone walks in and thinks the CEO is kidnapping an employee in the men's restroom." The mere idea sent Sarah into turbo mode. She stumbled out of the stall, tripped over the janitor's cart, and knocked over a bucket of water onto the floor. William had to jump to avoid being hit. Sarah looked at the mess, then at William, then back at the mess. "This is it. Hired and fired on the same day." "Get out!" William practically shouted. "Yes, sir." And with that, she ran out of the bathroom, her face burning with embarrassment. But the worst was yet to come. When William finally pulled himself together, put on his suit, and went to the meeting, there was Sarah, sitting among the other executives. She tried to smile, visibly nervous. William stopped in his tracks. "No way." His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Well, Mr. Smith, I'm your new interpreter." The silence that followed was so tense you could hear a pin drop. William closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I'm definitely being punished for something I did in a past life. William Smith was still trying to process what had just happened. The woman he had found hiding in a stall in the men's restroom, who had nearly scared him to death, who had spilled a bucket of water all over the floor like a walking disaster, was his new interpreter. This had to be some kind of joke from the universe. The meeting room was completely silent. All eyes were shifting between him and Sarah Cole, who was now trying, unsuccessfully, to hide behind a stack of papers. She was visibly sweating. You? William finally broke the silence, narrowing his eyes at her. You're my interpreter? Sarah, already expecting to be fired before she even started, tried to smile. Technically, yes. Technically? William repeated, crossing his arms. She cleared her throat and forced a professional tone. I mean, yes, I was hired to assist with international meetings and ensure smooth communication between the company and foreign investors. William blinked slowly, trying to process the information. And you started your first day by barging into the men's restroom? Sarah closed her eyes for a second, wishing she could disappear. It was a minor navigation error. Navigation error? Yes, I got lost, got confused, went through the wrong door, and suddenly, poof, I was there. In the stall. With you. By accident, of course. She let out a nervous laugh. The room remained silent, until one of the executives cleared his throat and said, Well, at least we know Miss Cole has an adventurous spirit. A few people chuckled quietly. William, however, was not amused. He ran a hand over his face, trying to keep his patience. Do I really deserve this? Is the universe punishing me for something? His eyes landed back on Sarah, who was now frantically shuffling papers, pretending to be extremely busy. Great. Now I have to work with her. He pulled out his chair, sat down and tapped his fingers on the table. All right, since everyone's here, let's begin. Sarah let out a relieved sigh, thinking he would finally leave her alone. But then, Miss Cole, she froze. Translate what I just said, now. Sarah blinked. Huh? William tilted his head. I said, I want you to translate, now. She swallowed hard. Oh, so he was going to test her? Okay, Sarah, deep breath. You studied for this? You can do it. Taking a second to collect herself, she looked at the foreign investors and fluently translated William's words. Everyone nodded in approval, but William didn't look convinced. He made sure to keep testing her relentlessly. And this? Translate this. Now this one. And this. With each phrase he threw at her, Sarah responded with confidence, translating without hesitation. The executives were impressed. Sarah knew what she was doing. She was quick, accurate, and could adapt the language naturally. By the end of the meeting, everyone was satisfied. Everyone except William. He was still looking for a reason to get rid of her. As soon as the investors left, he looked directly at Sarah. 1 week. Huh? You have 1 week to prove you deserve this job, he said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. If you make even one mistake, you're out. Sarah blinked. 1 week? Exactly. She crossed her arms. You mean if I survive for a week, you can't fire me? William smirked. If you survive. Sarah narrowed her eyes. So it's a challenge then? Call it whatever you want, William shrugged, but don't get too attached to the job. He shot her one last intimidating look and walked out of the room. As soon as the door closed, Sarah collapsed into her chair, letting out a long sigh. 1 week? Are you kidding me? She was not going to lose this job. And if William Smith thought she would give up easily, he was about to be very surprised. In the following days, William did everything he could to make Sarah fail. He assigned her complex translations, demanded impossible summaries, and scheduled meetings on short notice. But Sarah never wavered. She faced every challenge, sometimes stumbling a little, but always recovering. And the most frustrating part? She did it all without losing her sense of humor. One morning, for example, William suddenly appeared at her desk and dropped a massive report in front of her. I need this translated in 2 hours. Sarah looked at the stack of pages. Then she looked at him. 2 hours? Is there a problem? She smiled sweetly. No. I was just trying to figure out if you have any concept of time or if you live in a parallel reality. William raised an eyebrow. I heard that. You were supposed to, Mr. Smith. He narrowed his eyes. Good. Then stop talking and start translating. Sarah sighed but picked up the documents and got to work. And to William's frustration, she finished on time. But not every moment was a victory. By the 4th day, Sarah was exhausted. She had barely slept, spent the whole day translating contracts, and was so tired that when William asked her a question, she answered in German without realizing it. He raised an eyebrow. What? Sarah blinked slowly, her brain still catching up. Did I forget to switch to English? Yes. Oh. Silence. Well, you should learn German. It's a beautiful language, she said, not even trying to explain herself. William ran a hand down his face. This woman is going to drive me insane. By the end of the week, when Sarah walked into William's office to receive his final verdict, he was standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. Sit down, he said without turning around. Sarah obeyed, bracing herself for anything. Finally, he turned to face her. You passed the test. She nearly choked on her own breath. What? William sighed. I'll admit, you're better than I expected. Sarah blinked. Was that a compliment? Don't get used to it, he said quickly. She grinned. William Smith, the grumpy CEO, just admitted that he needs me. This is historic. He narrowed his eyes at her. Just don't get yourself into any more trouble. Sarah stood up, grabbing her things. I promise I won't walk into any more men's restrooms. Good. But as she walked out, a small smile slipped onto William's lips. He didn't want to admit it, but something about her intrigued him. And that irritated him to no end. Sarah was starting to get used to her work routine. Well, almost. Because working with William Smith felt like a battlefield. The man had a special talent for making things difficult. He was demanding, a perfectionist, and always found a way to test her. If she translated a document in record time, he gave her an even harder one. If she organized all the contracts, he created new requirements just to watch her scramble. Is this a war, Smith? Because I'm ready to fight, Sarah muttered to herself while carrying a pile of files. William happened to walk by at that moment and raised an eyebrow. What did you say? She froze. Nothing. I was just talking to no one. He gave her a once-over, rolled his eyes and walked back to his office. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, I just need to survive another day. That can't be too hard, right? Sarah was deeply focused, translating a massive report when a document landed right in front of her face. She blinked and looked up. It was William. I need this translated. How much time do I have? He crossed his arms and tilted his head. Now. Sarah blinked. Now? Is there a problem? She took a deep breath and grabbed the document. No problem. I was just wondering if you happen to follow a religion that forbids giving people reasonable deadlines. He raised an eyebrow. What was that? Nothing. I'm on it. She locked herself in the conference room and started translating as if her life depended on it. William knew he was pushing her hard. He wanted to see her fail. But Sarah wasn't about to give up. 2 hours later, she walked into his office holding the translated document. Here you go, Mr. Smith, proofread and everything. William took the file and carefully examined it. Sarah held her breath. And then, it's acceptable. She raised an eyebrow. Acceptable? Yes. Acceptable means perfect, brilliant, and better than I expected, but in William Smith language, right? He closed the folder and ignored her teasing. Sarah smiled, satisfied. She was winning these little battles. But William wasn't going to make it easy. That afternoon, William had an important meeting with a group of foreign investors. Sarah was there to translate. The room was full of men in suits, all staring at William as if he were a king about to make decisions that would change their lives. Sarah remained professional, translating everything with precision. But then, one of the investors made a mistake when mentioning numerical values. He said the investment should be 20 million, when in reality, the correct number was 200 million. Sarah caught the mistake immediately. She looked at William, waiting for him to correct it. But he remained silent. It was a test. Sarah swallowed hard. If I correct him, I'm overstepping my position. If I don't, I could harm the deal. She made a decision. With a firm voice, she corrected the number without hesitation. The investor looked confused for a second, then realized the mistake and nodded. William showed no reaction. The meeting continued. But when it ended and all the investors had left, he turned to her. You caught that mistake quickly. Sarah held her breath. Yes, and you had the courage to correct it. Yes. Silence. And then, good job. Sarah blinked several times. Sorry, could you repeat that? William raised an eyebrow. What? Did you just compliment me? Because I think I heard something like that. He rolled his eyes. Don't get used to it. Sarah smiled, and then for the first time, William realized he was starting to enjoy her presence. Sarah was beginning to understand how William Smith's mind worked. He was a mix of military discipline, extreme perfectionism, and a touch of emotional detachment. But behind that unshakable facade, there was something she couldn't quite figure out. A mystery that, the more time passed, the more evident it became. The past few days had been challenging, but Sarah was determined to prove she belonged there. No matter how much he tested her, no matter how many times he rolled his eyes at her comments or tried to make her quit. She had won one of the toughest challenges, earning a compliment from him, even if it was reluctant. Still, there was something about William that intrigued her. She had dealt with demanding bosses before, but none of them seemed to carry the weight he did. And that night, at the company's gala event, she finally got a clue about what it was. The event was grand. Luxurious halls, impeccably dressed waiters moving around with champagne glasses, guests in tailored suits and elegant evening gowns. Sarah had been instructed to be there to assist William in case any translation was needed for foreign business partners. Let's have some fun with those who only read the comments. Type McDonald's in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now, let's continue the story. He arrived late, which was unusual. As soon as he walked in, Sarah noticed something was off. He looked pale, more serious than usual, if that was even possible. His eyes scanned the room as if searching for something or someone. Then, when a waiter passed by, William suddenly stopped. Sarah saw the waiter offer him a glass of champagne, but he declined with a sharp gesture and stepped away as if he had touched fire. "William?" she called, taking a few steps toward him. He didn't respond. He just walked straight to the balcony, where the night air blew gently. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but her instinct told her to follow him. When she approached, she found him standing with his back to the party, hands gripping the balcony railing. His jaw was tight, his breathing slightly uneven. "Are you okay?" "It's none of your business," he replied without looking at her. Sarah crossed her arms and leaned against the railing beside him. "You don't look okay?" He let out a heavy sigh but still didn't look at her. "I just need a minute." "What happened?" Silence. Sarah realized she had touched a sensitive spot, and then, as if making an internal decision, William finally spoke. "I hate champagne." Sarah frowned, surprised by the response. "You hate champagne?" "Yes." "Any particular reason?" He turned his head to her, and for a moment Sarah saw something she had never seen before. Vulnerability. "Yes," he said simply. But he didn't explain further. Sarah could have let it go. She could have pretended this conversation never happened and gone back to the party. But for some reason, she felt this was important. "Do you want to talk about it?" He gave a humorless laugh. "Do I look like someone who talks about feelings? Honestly, no. But I think it's time someone tried." He looked at her, surprised. For a second, Sarah thought he might laugh or dismiss her with a sarcastic comment. But then he turned away and fell silent. She watched as his hand clenched around the railing, his knuckles turning white. "A long time ago," he began in a low voice, "I used to like champagne." Sarah waited. "Until one day, I realized it was always there during the most unfortunate moments of my life." A chill ran down her spine. "The day I lost someone I loved, there was a glass of champagne in my hand. The day my life turned upside down, I was at an event like this, with waiters offering champagne to everyone." Sarah didn't know what to say. He never talked about his personal life. It was as if his past, before becoming one of the most powerful men in the country, had been completely erased. "You lost someone important," she said softly. He slowly turned his head and looked at her. His gaze no longer held its usual arrogance or coldness. It was sad, distant. "Yes." Sarah felt her heart tighten. William looked away and let out a sigh. "But it doesn't matter. The past is the past." Sarah remained silent for a moment. "It does matter," she finally said. He frowned. "What? What happened to you, William? It matters." She saw him close his eyes for a second, as if trying to shut the conversation down. "I don't talk about it." "I noticed." He let out a bitter laugh. Sarah looked at him and smiled gently. "But if you ever want to, I know how to listen." She didn't know why she said that, maybe because she felt no one had ever said it to him before. For a moment, William just watched her. His eyes studied her face, her expression, her sincerity. He wasn't used to this, to someone caring, to someone who wanted nothing from him, except him. Finally, he looked away and sighed. "Let's go back to the party." Sarah nodded. He started walking, but before stepping back into the ballroom, he stopped and glanced at her over his shoulder. "Thank you." It was almost inaudible, but Sarah heard it, and for the first time, she knew she had broken through a wall no one else had. And maybe, just maybe, that was a problem. Sarah tried to ignore the strange feeling lingering after that conversation with William on the balcony. She didn't want to admit it, but something about him intrigued her more than it should. He was rude, controlling, and sometimes unbearable. But at the same time, there were moments when his cold facade cracked, revealing a man who seemed to carry a burden too heavy to bear alone. In the days that followed, William seemed even more reserved than usual. He avoided looking her in the eyes during meetings and kept their interactions as strictly professional as possible. Sarah realized he was trying to build a wall between them, as if pretending that moment of vulnerability had never happened. But the wall didn't last long. A business trip was scheduled, and as William's personal interpreter, Sarah had to go with him. It was an international conference, and many important meetings depended on clear communication between participants. Sarah wasn't worried about her work. She knew she was good at it. But spending so much time with William outside the office made her uneasy. The flight was smooth, but Sarah noticed that William was even quieter than usual. During the trip, he kept his eyes glued to his tablet, reviewing reports and ignoring any of her attempts at small talk. When they arrived at the hotel where the conference was being held, Sarah was impressed by the luxury of the place. The main hall was decorated with dazzling chandeliers and polished marble walls, the kind of setting where William seemed to belong naturally. She picked up her room key and was about to say goodnight and head off to rest when she heard William's cold voice behind her. "Dinner at 8. Don't be late." She turned around, surprised. "What? Dinner? Tonight, with investors. Wear something appropriate." She raised an eyebrow. "Something appropriate? Are you implying I don't know how to dress?" He gave her a bored look. "I'm saying you can't just show up wearing whatever you want. You need to present a professional image." "Oh, thanks for the advice, fashion guru." William just sighed and walked toward the elevator without responding. Sarah shook her head and headed to her room, muttering to herself. The dinner was a formal event, and to Sarah's surprise, William seemed different. He was still the serious, imposing CEO, but in that environment, he appeared even more untouchable, like he was made of steel. Throughout the night, he kept a polite smile as he spoke with the investors, but Sarah knew it was all a mask. When dinner was finally over, both of them were exhausted. They stepped into the elevator to head back to their rooms, and as soon as the doors closed, Sarah let out a relieved sigh. "I never thought I'd say this, but I actually miss the grumpy William from the office. This social side of you is terrifying." He shot her a sideways glance. "And I never thought I'd say this, but you talk too much." She rolled her eyes, but before she could respond, the elevator suddenly jolted and came to a stop. Sarah's eyes widened as she turned to William, waiting for him to say this was normal. "What was that?" He pressed a few buttons on the panel, but nothing happened. "Looks like we're stuck." "What?" A wave of panic crept up her spine. She had never liked small enclosed spaces, and getting trapped in an elevator with William Smith was definitely not on her agenda. "Relax," he said, as if that was the easiest thing in the world. "Relax? We're stuck inside a metal box suspended in midair, William. How exactly do you expect me to relax?" He looked at her, half annoyed, half amused. "Have you ever been stuck in an elevator before?" "No." "Then maybe this is a great opportunity to expand your life experiences." Sarah let out a sharp breath. "Oh, fantastic. I've always dreamed of a near-death experience with my unbearable boss." Ignoring her comment, William picked up the emergency phone. After a brief conversation, he hung up and sighed. "It's going to take at least an hour to fix." Sarah's eyes went wide. "An hour? I'm gonna die in here." "You're not gonna die. You don't know that. What if we run out of oxygen?" William let out a long sigh, as if dealing with an overly dramatic child. "Sarah, the elevator isn't airtight. You're not gonna suffocate." She crossed her arms and started pacing in the small space, he visibly restless. "I knew something would go wrong on this trip. I could feel it. My gut was telling me, Sarah, don't go. You'll end up stuck in an elevator with a man who has the emotional range of a door. But I came anyway." William raised an eyebrow. "I have the emotional range of a door?" "Yes. You never show emotions. The only time I saw anything remotely different was on the event balcony, and even then, you shut down in 2 seconds. He narrowed his eyes, but before he could respond, Sarah lost her balance and stumbled. Before she could fall, William caught her by the arm and pulled her close. It happened fast, just a reflex. But suddenly, Sarah found herself pressed against his chest, and the elevator felt smaller than ever. She looked up and met his gaze. For the first time, there was no cold exterior, no shield of arrogance, just him. Sarah's heart pounded, and for a moment time stood still. She saw the shift in his expression. The exact moment he realized what was happening. The exact moment he realized he wanted this, just as much as she did. But before anything could happen, the elevator started moving again. Sarah quickly stepped back, her face burning. William cleared his throat, adjusted his suit, and looked away. When the doors finally opened, they stepped out without saying a word. But as they walked in opposite directions down the hotel hallway, Sarah knew something had changed. And from the way William glanced at her before entering his room, she knew he felt it too. The problem was, what were they supposed to do about it? The next morning, Sarah woke up determined to act like nothing had happened in the elevator. It was just a weird moment. A slip-up caused by exhaustion and being stuck in a small space. Nothing more. But ignoring thoughts of William was nearly impossible, especially since he was acting even more distant than usual. During the conference meetings, he kept his distance and barely looked in her direction. She knew he was trying to pretend nothing had happened, but that only made things more awkward. After an entire day of meetings and formal events, the team was invited to a corporate dinner with important investors. Sarah didn't want to go. She was exhausted and would rather lock herself in her hotel room with a good book and forget that her life had become a mess of complicated emotions. But of course, William decided her presence was necessary. "It's not optional," he said flatly when she tried to argue. "You have to be there." And that's how Sarah ended up sitting at a luxurious table, listening to endless conversations about mergers and investments, while trying to ignore the fact that William was sitting right beside her. She forced herself to relax, taking a deep breath as she sipped her wine. After all, what could possibly go wrong? Wrong. The problem started when one of the investors, a man named Thomas Bradford, began paying too much attention to Sarah. At first, it was just friendly conversation. But as the night went on, he started getting closer than necessary, his voice becoming more suggestive. "You're different from the other interpreters I've met," he said, with a smile that Sarah didn't like one bit. "Oh, that's interesting," she replied, forcing a polite smile. "I mean it. You have a charming way about you. I bet you're very popular with men." Sarah felt the chair next to her shift, and in the blink of an eye, William spoke before she could even respond. "She's with someone." His tone was cold, sharp. Sarah froze. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Thomas narrowed his eyes. "With someone?" William took a sip of his wine, his posture relaxed, but his gaze dangerous. "Yes." Sarah blinked, confused. "I am?" William glanced at her briefly, as if warning her in silence not to contradict him. Thomas chuckled. "Funny, she didn't seem to know that." "She does now," William said flatly. Silence hung over the table for a moment, but Thomas didn't look convinced. He leaned forward, still looking at Sarah. "Well, if you ever change your mind, I'd love to take you to dinner." It was quick. William set his wine glass down with a soft thud, and before Sarah could even process it, he shot back. "She won't change her mind." Thomas raised his hands. "Relax, just a joke." But William didn't look relaxed at all. Sarah didn't know if she wanted to punch him for acting that way, or if she felt oddly flattered. When dinner finally ended, William left the table without waiting for anyone. Sarah had no choice but to go after him. The moment they stepped outside into the hotel garden, she finally exploded. "What was that?" He stopped walking and looked at her. "That was me solving a problem before it started." "A problem? What do you think I am? A classified file that needs extra security." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He was crossing a line. "And you think playing the caveman and claiming I'm with someone was the best solution? It worked, didn't it?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you kidding me?" He looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes seeming to assess her. "I didn't like the way he was looking at you." Sarah's heart pounded. "That doesn't give you the right to act like you have some sort of claim over me." William's jaw tightened. "You don't get it, do you?" "What?" He took a deep breath. "You throw me off balance, Sarah. And I'm not used to that." She blinked, caught off guard. What?" Before she could process what he had just said, he cupped her face and kissed her. It was quick, intense, but full of something Sarah couldn't quite name. When he pulled away, her eyes were still wide. I don't." William took a deep breath, as if he had just made a mistake. "Forget it." She touched her lips, stunned. "What do you mean, forget it?" He closed his eyes for a second before opening them again. "I shouldn't have done that." Sarah crossed her arms. "But you did." Silence stretched between them. Then, without warning, he simply turned and walked away. Sarah stood there in the middle of the garden, feeling like her life had just gotten a whole lot more complicated. She should have been furious. She should have demanded answers. But instead, all she could think about was the fact that she wanted him to kiss her again. And that was a big problem. Sarah spent the night tossing and turning, unable to get that kiss out of her head. Her mind replayed the moment like a movie stuck on repeat, and every time she remembered the warmth of William's lips against hers, She felt a mix of frustration and something she wasn't ready to admit. The problem wasn't the kiss itself. The problem was what came after. He had told her to forget it, like it was nothing, like that moment hadn't meant anything to him. And maybe it really hadn't. Sarah rolled her eyes and forced herself to get up. She wasn't the kind of woman who dwelled on things. William Carter might be a powerful CEO, but he didn't own her thoughts. Determined to act normal, she got ready for another day of meetings and decided that if William wanted to pretend nothing had happened, she would pretend even better. When she arrived at the office, she went straight to the conference room where William was reviewing some documents. He seemed completely absorbed in his work, eyes fixed on the laptop screen, fingers gliding over the touchpad as he read reports. Sarah cleared her throat, waiting for him to look up, but he didn't even blink. "Good morning," she said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing. Not even a glance." "Oh, so now you've decided to act like I'm invisible?" She crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes. He finally lifted his head, looking at her with the same impassive expression as always. "I'm not ignoring you," he said flatly. "I'm just busy." Sarah let out a disbelieving laugh. "Busy? After last night, all you have to say to me is that you're busy? What do you want me to say?" She felt her face heat up. "Maybe start with, 'Sorry for kissing you,' and then pretending it never happened?" William sighed and closed his laptop. "Look, Sarah, that was a mistake." Her stomach dropped. "A mistake? I got carried away. It shouldn't have happened." Sarah let out a humorless laugh. "Wow, and here I thought you didn't have it in you to be a jerk." He looked at her seriously. "I'm not trying to be a jerk, I'm being honest." "Oh right. The ruthless CEO, always so honest." She leaned forward over the table. "You know what's funny, William? You kissed me. You felt something. But instead of dealing with it like an adult, you're running away like a coward." His eyes flickered with something unreadable, but he said nothing. Sarah crossed her arms. "You can act indifferent all you want, but I know that meant something to you." He pressed his lips into a thin line, then stood up and adjusted his suit. "If you're done with your speech, we have a meeting to get to." Sarah stared at him, speechless. "You're really going to do this? Pretend nothing happened and just move on?" William picked up the papers on the table, calmly organizing them. "Yes," she huffed, spinning on her heel and walking out of the room without looking back. The rest of the day was a silent battle between them. Every time they crossed paths in the hallway, William avoided looking at her, as if she were just another employee. But Sarah knew it was just an act. He was fighting something. And if he thought he could ignore it forever, he was very wrong. That evening, Sarah decided she needed to clear her head. So she accepted an invitation from Olivia, a coworker, to have dinner at a trendy restaurant. "You've been acting strange lately," Olivia commented, sipping her wine. Sarah twirled her glass between her fingers. "Oh, it's nothing. Just work problems." "Problems named William Smith?" Sarah nearly choked. "What?" Olivia laughed. "Sarah, the whole company can see there's something going on between you two, the way he looks at you." "He doesn't look at me at all. And that's exactly why it's obvious. He never looks at anyone, but he used to look at you. Now he's trying to cover it up." Sarah shook her head. "This is ridiculous. There's nothing going on between us." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "If you say so." Before Sarah could respond, she heard someone say her name. She turned, and her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. William was standing there, dressed in his usual sharp suit, expression serious, just like always. "Can we talk?" he asked, completely ignoring Olivia. Sarah blinked. "Now?" "Now." Olivia raised her hands. "I'll get another glass of wine. Have fun." Sarah sighed and got up, following William to a more private area of the restaurant. "What do you want?" she asked, crossing her arms. William hesitated for a second, as if gathering the courage to speak. "You were right." Sarah blinked. "What?" He took a deep breath. "About the kiss, about how I feel." Her heart started pounding. "You feel?" He nodded. "But I don't know how to deal with it." Sarah searched his eyes, looking for any trace of doubt. "Then stop running away." He was silent for a moment. Then, suddenly, he pulled her close and kissed her again. But this time, there was no hesitation. The kiss was intense, full of all the emotions he had been holding back, as if he was finally allowing himself to feel. When they pulled apart, Sarah smiled. "Now that makes more sense." William chuckled, resting his forehead against hers. "I'm terrible at admitting feelings." She laughed. "And I'm terrible at accepting apologies." He ran his fingers gently over her face. "Can we try again?" Sarah smiled. "We can." And this time, there were no more excuses. Sarah woke up that morning with a mix of emotions. The kiss from the night before still burned in her memory, but the uncertainty about what would come next weighed on her. William wasn't an easy man. He avoided emotions like the plague. And now he had given in. But for how long? When she arrived at the office, she noticed the curious looks from some colleagues. Gossip spread fast around there, and the fact that William Smith, the man known for being cold and untouchable, had been spotted at a restaurant kissing his interpreter was bound to fuel rumors for weeks. Sarah grabbed a coffee and headed straight to the meeting room. She had decided she wouldn't act any differently, but she knew William wouldn't follow the same plan. And, as expected, when he walked into the room, he didn't look directly at her. "Good morning." His voice was neutral, as always. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" He hesitated for a second before answering without meeting her eyes. "Yes. And you?" She held back a smile. He was trying to act normal, but he couldn't hide the slight flush on his ears. "Great night." The meeting started, and as expected, William maintained his professional and distant demeanor. But Sarah knew how to read the subtle nuances in his expression. When one of the investors in the meeting, an older and arrogant man named Gregory Shaw, gave her a suggestive smile, William's jaw tightened. "Miss Cole," Gregory said, leaning slightly across the table, "would it be possible for me to ask for your help with an event I'm organizing for foreign investors?" Sarah glanced at William, who remained rigid. "What kind of help exactly?" "I need an interpreter, but also someone who knows how to handle demanding guests, and you seem to have a special talent for keeping people entertained." Sarah caught the implication in his words, and before she could respond, William stepped in. "Miss Cole has commitments with the company. She's not available for extra work." His tone was sharp, and Gregory raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Is that so?" Gregory smirked, a teasing glint in his eyes. "I thought she could decide that for herself." William held his gaze, and the silence in the room grew tense. Sarah decided to step in before things escalated. "Mr. Shaw, I appreciate the offer, but I'm currently focused on internal company projects. I hope you find someone suitable for the event." Gregory studied her for a moment, before giving a slight nod. "Understood. A shame." As soon as the meeting ended, William left the room without a word. Sarah knew he was upset, but why? Did he want her to stay away from Gregory, or did he just hate losing control of the situation? Determined to get some answers, she went to his office. William was behind his desk, working on his computer. But when he saw her walk in, he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "What is it?" "You tell me," she said, closing the door behind her. "What was your problem in the meeting?" He sighed. "I don't like Shaw. He has a history with the women in this company." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "So, you were protecting me?" He looked away. "Yes." She bit her lip to keep from smiling. "And what exactly do you feel for me, William?" He closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. Before he could continue, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," William said, and Sarah sighed, annoyed by the interruption. His assistant, Olivia, walked in, holding an envelope. "Mr. Smith, this was delivered with your name on it. Apparently, it's an invitation to a charity event in honor of—" She trailed off as she read the name. "Emily Carter." A heavy silence filled the room. Sarah didn't know who Emily was, but when she looked at William, she saw the color drain from his face. He took the envelope from Olivia's hands and simply nodded. "Thank you, Olivia." His assistant hesitated before leaving. As soon as the door closed, Sarah slowly stepped closer. "Who is Emily?" William gripped the envelope tightly, his knuckles turning white. "My fiancée." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Your fiancée?" He let out a long breath before finally meeting her eyes. "My ex-fiancée." Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. "What happened?" William stood and walked over to the window. "She died." The confession made Sarah's heart sink. "Oh my God, William." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "You don't have to say anything. Just give me some time." Sarah stayed silent, watching him for a moment before nodding. "Okay." She left the office, but her heart stayed with him. In the days that followed, William became even more withdrawn. He avoided long conversations, kept himself busy with meetings, and whenever Sarah tried to get close, he found an excuse to leave. But she wasn't the kind of person to give up easily. One night, noticing that the light in his office was still on, she decided to try again. "I know you want to be alone," she said, stepping inside without knocking. William looked up, tired. "Sarah, I really—" "Just listen." She closed the door and walked toward him. "I can't imagine what you've been through, but avoiding me won't change what you feel." William closed his eyes for a moment before speaking. Emily was the only woman I ever loved. Sarah felt a sting in her chest, but she stood her ground. And does that mean you'll never love again? He hesitated. I don't know. Sarah sighed and took his hands in hers. You need to let yourself feel again, William. He studied her for a long moment before finally admitting, I'm scared, Sarah. She smiled, squeezing his hands. So am I. Sarah woke up that morning feeling restless. She and William had finally broken through the invisible wall between them. But now came the hardest part. Was he willing to move forward, or would he still let the past control his future? As she drank her coffee, her mind kept replaying the night before. The way William held her hands, the fear in his eyes when he confessed his doubts. He was broken, and she wanted to help him rebuild. But would he let her? When she arrived at the office, Sarah noticed William's distant behavior. He was cold again, and that wasn't a good sign. Good morning, she said, testing the waters. Good morning, he replied, emotionless. She frowned. Can we talk later? He didn't look at her. I'm busy today. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to stay patient. I understand. She walked away, but frustration bubbled inside her. He was pulling back, and it was driving her crazy. During the meeting, William stayed focused on work. When Sarah tried to engage, he was brief, almost indifferent. The cold CEO was back. The day passed, and when night fell, Sarah decided she needed answers. She waited until everyone had left the building and went to his office. You're avoiding me, she said, closing the door behind her. William sighed, running a hand through his hair. Sarah, I don't. Yes, you are, she cut him off. Last night, you finally opened up to me, and now you're shutting me out again. He stayed silent. What happened? He hesitated before answering. I don't know if I can do this. Sarah crossed her arms. Why? He stood up, pacing the room. I have feelings for you, Sarah. Feelings I haven't had in a long time. Her heart pounded at his words. Then what's the problem? He stopped and looked at her. What if I can't give you what you deserve? Sarah took a deep breath, trying to keep her frustration in check. You think I don't know what I'm getting into? I know you have scars, William, but that doesn't mean you can't love again. He looked away. I don't want to hurt you. She stepped closer, cupping his face and making him look at her. Then stop hurting me now. His eyes were filled with conflict, but before he could answer, Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the screen, and her stomach dropped. It was an email from the company, an official statement. Miss Sarah Cole has resigned from the company, approved by CEO William Smith. Sarah froze. What is this? William stiffened. Sarah? She took a step back, gripping her phone tightly. You signed my resignation? He closed his eyes for a moment. I thought that I wouldn't stay after what happened. Her voice trembled. He nodded slowly. A deep pain filled Sarah's chest. You decided for me. I was trying to. Protect me? She let out a bitter laugh. William, you're always running away. And now, instead of giving me the chance to choose, you made the decision for me. She tightened her grip on the phone, her eyes burning. You know what hurts the most? I would have chosen you. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. Sarah, please. She looked at him, eyes full of pain. It's over, William. And with that, she walked out, leaving him alone. Sarah didn't return to the company the next day, or the day after that. She had already decided. She was done chasing someone who kept pushing her away. Now, sitting at the airport, holding her ticket to another city, she felt a mix of relief and sadness. Suddenly, a commotion started around her. People whispering, pointing. She looked up, and her heart stopped. William Smith was there, in the middle of the airport, and he looked like a desperate man. He ran toward her, ignoring the curious glances around him. Sarah? She closed her eyes for a second before facing him. What are you doing here? He took a deep breath, trying to catch his breath. I was an idiot. She crossed her arms. I agree. He let out a nervous laugh. You always challenge me, don't you? And you always run away. He was silent for a moment before finally saying, I don't want to run anymore. Sarah's heart pounded. And what changed? He looked straight into her eyes. I realized I can't live without you. She swallowed hard. William? I love you, Sarah. Her eyes filled with tears. And what if I don't believe you? He reached into his pocket and got down on one knee in the middle of the airport. Sarah was stunned. What are you doing? Asking you for a chance. She felt the tears fall. This isn't fair. He smiled. For the first time, I'm betting everything. She looked at him for a long moment before finally sighing. I hate you for doing this in front of everyone. He smiled. But does that mean you'll stay? She bit her lip before nodding. Yes. William stood up and pulled her into a deep kiss as the people around them applauded. And for the first time, He knew he wasn't going to run anymore. Sarah never imagined her life would turn into a full-blown romantic movie scene. The coldest, most indifferent CEO in town was there, kneeling in the middle of the airport, declaring his love for her in front of dozens of strangers, all holding up their phones, ready to record every second. And the worst part? She felt her heart melting like butter in the sun. William held her hand tightly, his intense eyes locked on hers, as if he feared that if he let go, she would disappear into thin air. "I know I'm an idiot, Sarah," he said without blinking. "And I know I've messed up more times than I can count. But if there's one thing I've learned in the past few days, it's that the only thing that truly matters is you and me." She bit her lip, trying to hold back the tears. "William, He took her other hand, squeezing it gently. "Let me prove I can be better, that I won't run away anymore. I just want a chance to make this right." Sarah's heart raced. He was being sincere. No arrogance, no games, just a man trying to fix his mistakes. She took a deep breath. "If you're lying?" "I'm not," he interrupted, certain. She looked at him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Okay." William let out a relieved laugh, and without waiting another second, pulled her into a kiss. The crowd around them erupted in cheers and whistles. Some shouted things like, "Now that's real romance," and "CEO of the Year." Sarah laughed against his lips. "You do realize we're going viral right now, don't you?" He shrugged, smiling. "As long as you stay with me, I don't care." That night, William never let her out of his sight. They went to his place, and for the first time, he opened his world to her. Sarah looked around at the stark white walls of his immaculate apartment. Everything was meticulously organized, reflecting William's controlled personality. "Your apartment looks like something out of an architecture magazine," she teased, glancing at the perfectly placed furniture. He chuckled. "That's only because I never had anyone to mess it up." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying I'm messy?" "I'm saying maybe a little chaos in my life wouldn't be so bad." Sarah smiled, and before she could say anything, William pulled her by the waist, pressing her body against his. "You know this doesn't end here, right?" he murmured, his eyes burning with intensity. She looked at him, her heart pounding. "And what exactly are you trying to say, CEO Carter?" He cupped her face with both hands. "I'm saying that no matter what happens, I want you in my life." She felt warmth spread through her chest. "So you're really ready for this? For something real?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Sarah smiled. "Okay." The following days were different. For the first time, William and Sarah were together without barriers, without excuses, without fear. He made sure to have lunch with her, to pick her up for meetings with a coffee in hand, to pull her into a kiss when he thought no one was watching, though the whole company already knew. Sarah felt happy, truly happy. But then came the surprise. She started feeling off. Sudden exhaustion, frequent dizziness, and strange cravings for things she wouldn't normally eat. And it wasn't until she spent an entire morning feeling nauseous in the bathroom that she realized what was happening. Sarah swallowed hard. This can't be. She grabbed her phone and scheduled an appointment right away. The next day, she was sitting in the doctor's waiting room, her heart pounding. The doctor walked in with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Cole. How are you feeling?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Apparently, nauseous," the doctor chuckled. "Well, let's find out why." A short time later, the confirmation came. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her. She blinked a few times, trying to process. "Pregnant?" The doctor smiled. "Yes. Based on the tests, you're about 6 weeks along." Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. She was expecting William's baby. A wave of emotions washed over her. Fear, joy, anxiety. How would he react? She looked down at the positive test in her hand and knew she couldn't put off the conversation any longer. That night, she went to his apartment. William greeted her with a smile. "You took a while. I was about to come get you." Sarah smiled nervously. "I needed to think." He noticed the tension on her face and frowned. "What is it? Did something happen?" She took a deep breath. "Yes." He took her hands in his. "Sarah, you're scaring me." She bit her lip. "I'm pregnant." Time seemed to freeze. William stood still for a few seconds. His eyes widened slightly, his mouth opened, but no words came out. "What?" Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "I know it's a shock. I was surprised too. But it's real." William blinked a few times trying to process. Then suddenly, he laughed. "Pregnant." She watched him, unsure. "Are you okay?" He pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I never imagined this, but it's the best news I've ever gotten." Sarah felt tears welling up. "So, you're not scared?" He pulled back slightly, cupping her face with both hands. "Scared?" "Yes, But I'm also happy. Really happy. She smiled, relieved. Me too. He looked deep into her eyes. Marry me. Sarah blinked in surprise. What? William smiled. Marry me. Not just because of the baby, but because I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Tears streamed down her face. Are you serious? I've never been more serious. She let out a shaky laugh, overwhelmed. William, he held her hand firmly. I'll prove to you that I'm ready for this. She looked at him, her heart completely melting. Then prove it, he smiled. I will. And in that moment, Sarah knew her life would never be the same. Sarah was never the type to be swayed by words. She had heard promises before. Beautiful words spoken in the heat of the moment, filled with emotion, only to disappear like smoke the next day. And now, here she was, looking at William, who had just proposed to her. Her heart wanted to say yes. It wanted to jump for joy and throw itself into his arms without hesitation. But her mind was more stubborn. William, she murmured, feeling the weight of the decision. He held her hand firmly, his blue eyes piercing into hers. I know what you're going to say, he interrupted, his voice low and steady. You want to be sure. You need to see that I've really changed. She nodded, unable to hide the lump in her throat. I need to know this isn't just the heat of the moment. He held her gaze and smiled. Then I'll prove it. And that's exactly what he did. The next morning, Sarah woke up to a message from him on her phone. William, I'll pick you up at 9. No questions. She frowned, but knowing he had a history of surprises, decided to just go with it. When she stepped outside, she found William leaning against a sleek black car, arms crossed, a playful smirk on his lips. You're being mysterious, she commented, getting in the car. I'm just being strategic. The car took them across town to a building Sarah had never seen before. As they got out, she noticed a large golden sign above the glass doors. Bright Futures Community Center. She looked at him, confused. What are we doing here? William opened the door for her. You'll see. Inside, the place was bustling. Kids ran through the halls, volunteers organized donation boxes, and teachers guided small groups of students through their lessons. I used to come here when I was younger, William explained as they walked. After my mom died, my dad buried himself in work, and for a while, this was the only place where I felt like I belonged. Sarah looked around, taking it all in. You never told me that. He gave a small, lopsided smile. I never told anyone. They walked into a room where a group of teenagers was intently focused on a chalkboard filled with calculations. An elderly woman was guiding them, but she seemed to be struggling to explain the material. William, the woman smiled when she saw him. I thought you weren't coming this week. I had some unexpected things come up, he replied with a smile, then turned to Sarah. This is Mrs. Hargrove. She was my teacher here when I was 12. Sarah's eyes widened. You studied here? I told you I spent some time here. He smiled before turning back to Mrs. Hargrove. Need some help? If you can convince these stubborn kids to like math, I'll take any help I can get. William sat down among the teenagers, picked up a marker, and started explaining the calculations as if they were the easiest thing in the world. Sarah stood still, watching, surprised. Let's have some fun with those who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now let's continue the story. She had seen William in many different versions. The relentless CEO, the charming man, the stubborn one who refused to take no for an answer. But this version, this was new, and she loved every second of it. Hours later, as they were heading home, Sarah finally spoke. Do you do this every week? William nodded. Whenever I can. She smiled, touched. I never imagined you were this kind of man. He glanced at her. What kind of man? The kind who cares about others. William let out a short laugh. I always have. You just didn't see it. Sarah bit her lip, feeling her heart race. And was this part of your test? He stopped at a red light and turned fully toward her. I want you to see every part of me, Sarah. Not just the CEO, not just the man who kisses you when he thinks no one is watching. I want you to see who I really am. She held his gaze, feeling the emotion rise within her. I see you. Days passed, and William never stopped proving his commitment. He rearranged his schedule to make time for them. He brought Sarah coffee at work. He insisted on picking her up, even when he could have sent a driver. Not a day went by without him asking how she was feeling. And most importantly, he never ran away again. That's when Sarah realized she already had her answer. One night, as they had dinner in his apartment, Sarah set her utensils down and took a deep breath. William, he looked up. Yes? She wet her lips, feeling nervous. I want to say yes, he frowned. Yes to what? What? She smiled. Yes to you. William blinked. You mean? She nodded. Yes. He was still for a moment, and then, without hesitation, he stood up, walked around the table, and pulled her into a deep, emotion-filled kiss. Sarah smiled against his lips. Does that mean you liked my answer? He chuckled, resting his forehead against hers. I've never liked anything more in my life. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Then I guess we're officially in this together. He cupped her face in his hands. We always have been. And in that moment, Sarah knew. There was no more doubt. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah. If someone had told her that her life would change so drastically from the day she accidentally walked into the men's restroom at the office, she would have laughed and called them crazy. But now, here she was, lying on an exam table, cold gel on her belly, holding William's hand as they both watched the ultrasound screen intently. And here is your baby, the doctor said, pointing at the screen. William's grip on Sarah's hand tightened slightly. His normally serious, composed face was softened by emotion. That little dot right there, that's our baby? He asked, his voice slightly rough. Sarah nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. Yes, William, that's our baby. He let out a quiet, incredulous laugh, running a hand through his hair. Wow. The doctor smiled. Everything looks good. The baby is developing well. Sarah looked at William and saw that he was completely mesmerized by the screen, as if nothing else in the world mattered at that moment. Are you okay? She asked, laughing a little. He blinked, as if snapping back to reality. Yeah, I'm a CEO. I spend my days making big decisions, closing million-dollar deals, and now, all of that feels insignificant compared to this. Sarah smiled, feeling her heart melt. I know. The doctor wiped the gel from Sarah's belly and handed them a few printed ultrasound images. I'll leave you two to enjoy this moment. See you at the next appointment. Sarah and William walked out of the doctor's office hand in hand, still silent. In the car, as he stared at the images of their baby, William spoke softly. This is real. We're going to be parents. She looked at him, her strong, unshakable man in business, now completely vulnerable and emotional over something so simple and yet so grand. Yes, William, we're going to be parents. He placed his hand on her belly and smiled. I never imagined anything could make me this happy. The next few months flew by. William made sure to go with her to every appointment, holding her hand during each exam, celebrating every bit of progress. He got ridiculously excited every time he heard the baby's heartbeat or saw Sarah's belly grow. Do you realize that I'm officially obsessed with this baby? He said one day, reading a parenting book while gently rubbing her belly. Sarah laughed. I've already noticed. Have you thought of any names? He asked, looking at her. Not yet. What about you? He smirked. I have a few ideas, but I think we should wait until we see her little face before deciding. She raised an eyebrow. Huh? He shrugged. I have a feeling it's going to be a girl. Sarah laughed. Well, if it is, are you ready to be the father of a mini version of me? He made a dramatic, terrified face. God help us. She playfully smacked his arm, laughing, and William pulled her in for a kiss. Boy or girl, I already love this little one more than I ever thought possible. Sarah sighed, resting her forehead against his. Me too. The wedding happened before the baby was born, and like everything between them, it was a mix of emotion, love, and, of course, a little chaos. On the day of the ceremony, Sarah was in the hotel room getting ready when her best friend Emma rushed in. We have a little problem. Sarah, who was just finishing putting on her dress, widened her eyes. What? Did William run away? Emma huffed. Of course not, but he's freaking out. Freaking out how? Emma sighed. Like a control freak CEO who can't handle not being in charge. He's checking the wedding schedule every 5 minutes, making sure everything is perfect and basically stressing out half the event staff. Sarah laughed. He just wants everything to be perfect. Yes, and if he keeps this up, the groom will pass out before you even walk down the aisle. Sarah took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and smiled. I'll handle it. 5 minutes later, Sarah found William in the hotel garden where the ceremony would take place. He was pacing back and forth talking to one of the planners, clearly tense. William! He turned quickly, eyes wide as he saw her still in her wedding dress. Sarah, you're not supposed to see me before the ceremony. My love, if I didn't come out here, you'd have a nervous breakdown before even reaching the altar. He sighed, running his hands over his face. I just want everything to be perfect. Sarah stepped closer, took his hand, and placed it on her belly. It already is, William. He took a deep breath, looking at her. I love you. And I love you. Now relax, or I'll have to drag you to the altar. He chuckled. I'd like to see that. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah walked down the aisle holding a bouquet of lilies, while William waited for her with a smile that could melt any heart. Their vows were emotional, and there wasn't a single person who didn't shed at least one tear. And when the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," William didn't hesitate for a second before pulling her in for a deep, passionate kiss, making their guests laugh and applaud. A few months later, they were at the hospital. "You can do this, my love." William held Sarah's hand as she took a deep breath, bracing for another contraction. "I am never letting you touch me again," she screamed. Squeezing his hand tightly, William laughed, even as he felt his fingers going numb. "That's fine, I'll take my punishment. But first, let's bring our daughter into the world." And then, minutes later, the first cry echoed through the room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. William looked at Sarah, his eyes brimming with tears. "I knew it." Sarah laughed, exhausted but overjoyed. Soon a nurse placed the baby in Sarah's arms, and she felt tears stream down her face as she looked at the tiny little face. "Hi, my love." William leaned in, kissing his daughter's forehead and then Sarah's. "She's perfect." "Yes, she is." He took his daughter's tiny hand and whispered, "Welcome to the world, my princess." And in that moment, with his wife by his side and his daughter in his arms, William knew he would never in his entire life be happier than he was right then. Have you ever walked into the wrong restroom by mistake? What did you think of William and Sarah's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with all our stories. And don't forget to check out more touching stories by clicking here on the final screen.